Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another Convergent Digital Transformation webinar. I'm joined today again by Kyle Elliott and Lou Capuzzo of VectorFlow. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Doug.
Today, we're going to be doing a conversation and demo of their SOC automation suite. Now, if you remember, just a few weeks ago, we did another webinar with the team here, and we're able to go through their physical identity access management platform, which is kind of the core component to VectorFlow. But as we start to talk about their SOC automation tool, you'll start to see why that is a significant part of their platform and why it's an opportunity for you to look at your organization's process around them. We'll get into what that all means. So with that, let's just do a quick recap on what we talked about before, because I think it plays into a little bit of what we're going to learn today. First off, physical identity access management is really about managing the hire to retire life cycle. So taking all of those disparate identity platforms, bringing them into a single converged solution like VectorFlow, and then being able to develop workflows, policies, and apply different types of access rights across those various different systems and locations to be able to enable an automated way of onboarding and offboarding those identities when they have access to your sites. So overall, being able to gain access to those physical access control systems, the data associated with them, the different types of endpoints, so all the door devices and the actual card holder behaviors, all of that information gets stored and flows through VectorFlow. And so when we think about starting that physical identity access management conversation, some of the key things we ask people to think about within their own organization is, do you have multiple disparate access control systems? Have you gone through a variety of merger and acquisitions, or have you not had very specific policies around what systems to standardize on? You may be a really good candidate for PIAM. Another part of this is, do you have a lot of manual processes? So is HR sending an email to facilities, and facilities is having to send something to security to then authorize and get someone entered into a PAC system? If this is cumbersome, if it takes more than a few days to get this process knocked down, again, this may be a perfect solution for you. As well as we see a lot of organizations moving to more secure credentials. Big companies that have used, for example, legacy proximity cards for a long period of time may be moving towards an EV2, EV3, or HID SEOS card. Well, in those instances, rebadging a large population requires a lot of planning and a very specific way to be able to achieve that rebadge in a very short period of time. So if you're going to be going through a rebadge, this may also be a talking point within your organization. And then when we think about that automation component, organizations are continuously struggling to hire people, and this is also going to apply to the SOC automation conversation. But do you see your organization looking for ways to maximize output of the existing colleagues that you have in place? Automation can help you with that. And then lastly, as with any technology you introduce into an organization, the objective is to enable better employee, customer, contractor experiences, not just for the administrators that have to run the system, but also for end users, especially when we start to talk about self-service. Did you lose or forget a badge at home? Well, when you come in, you want to be able to take care of that yourself without having to interface with multiple people. So PIAM, very core to VectorFlow's capabilities, as we saw here a few weeks ago, but the recap definitely plays into our introduction to their SOC automation capabilities. Now, Kyle will be talking about this here to kick off, but as you can see, there's a few different applications that VectorFlow specifically manages. Up there in the upper left, you've got the identity applications, which I just did a brief recap on. Today, we're going to be focusing on their SOC automation portfolio in the red. And so we'll let them kind of dive into that. But as you're going through this webinar, and as Kyle and Lou take the time to walk you through the capabilities and really address what they're solving for, let's think about some of the challenges you may be having as an organization internally that could open up the conversation around this. So the first and foremost is just, does your organization deal with a lot of false or nuisance alarms? Do your guards have to go through and just batch acknowledge, or are you just masking alarms that could actually require some type of response? Another thing we find is, again, kind of going back to that conversation around hiring and maintaining top talent, is it difficult to find those SOC analysts, those guards or security team members that spend their time within the actual PACS application, and they're looking through a long string of alarms and trying to make sense of all that data from a human element, understanding how to apply maybe machine learning or artificial intelligence of the application to accelerate the ability of the people you have already is a key component of this. So let's be thinking about that as we go through this. And then the need to show cost reduction through your alarm monitoring and response programs. Security is usually a significant cost center. So how can you demonstrate that you're leveraging technology to be able to get not only through all the alarms your technology is surfacing, but more importantly, getting to the stuff that actually requires a response plan or attention? And then lastly, and this is kind of core across all these conversations, it's just having multiple disparate access systems, having a single place to really understand and recognize what needs to be responded to and make sense of all of that across a variety of different platforms, again, which is difficult from just a human perspective to be able to manage. So with that, hopefully that gives you a few ideas to be thinking about as we go into this. I'll turn things over to Kyle to continue the conversation. Kyle.
Well, thank you very much, Doug. And forgive me, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in just a moment. Good. I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. And thank you again for being here today and welcome. My name's Kyle Elliott. I lead the sales organization for VectorFlow. And our agenda today is pretty straightforward. We're going to be very focused around SOC automation, using the power of data to be able to solve some very known chronic problems that face GSOCs and SOCs every single day. There's a couple of key areas where VectorFlow is really utilizing the power of your data and leveraging the investments you've made in various technologies in your SOC to be able to solve these chronic problems. False and nuisance alarms. Let's not mask them. Let's not throw them away. Let's not delete them. Let's figure out the root cause of those alarms and eliminate those challenges for operators and guard dispatching. Providing a predictive device health maintenance capability so that you have a proactive means of looking at the health and wellness of your various devices, reducing the steps, the time, and the cost to maintaining that, and providing a much more effective break fix process. And then lastly, performance. How do we measure our performance, our people, our processes, even our technologies? And how do we do a much more, again, proactive means of being able to monitor and measure and provide more operationally effective means of being able to improve our security posture? That's what we'll be focusing on today. So with that, let's talk a little bit about VectorFlow. And many of you have been on a couple of prior VectorFlow Convergint technology webinars. We are a company that is driven around the partnership with our customers to utilize the power of their data from systems, logs, applications, databases, systems, to be able to provide a digital transformation and automation path and security where it makes most sense, where it has the greatest impact. And so today we'll be focusing principally around areas within the SOC where we can reduce cost, provide a much more proactive means of your security posture, and ultimately saving you time and money and creating a much better experience for your end user community. And as Doug alluded to earlier, VectorFlow is, a completely state-of-the-art company. We're doing things that nobody else in the security industry is doing, which is leveraging the power of data, using artificial intelligence and machine learning to create actionable intelligence to feed these different applications that we provide to our customers. And today we'll focus around SOC automation and a significant measurable opportunity to improve your security posture, to optimize your workforce, and to provide better value in this, very different hybrid workforce world that we're living in. VectorFlow brings to bear a technology stack that, again, I think is second to none and is completely differentiated from others in the industry. utilizing real-time data streaming, capturing data in motion. We live in a real-time world. Your software and your security posture needs to be real-time as well. Utilizing AI and ML to look at behaviors and patterns, looking at the nuggets of information from your historical data as well as your current data to be able to provide a better experience, to provide more actionable information, to create predictions and recommendations. That's the power of AI. Our solutions are a subscription-based model for SOC applications. We typically deploy within a number of days. We start ingesting data and delivering results. The software is completely adaptable and flexible to the changes that will inherently happen over time within your organization, different locations, different countries, different requirements. The software needs to be adaptable and flexible enough, and we utilize playbooks and design studios to provide no-code customizations to the software that will be very simple and easy for you to maintain and manage. So let's talk about some of the chronic problems that exist in the SOC today. Well, we know that most organizations are flooded with thousands, tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of alarms and events each day. They're challenged with maintaining the health and wellness of their various devices, and they're constantly trying to improve their overall performance. Vector Flow provides capabilities within our applications to reduce false and nuisance alarms over 80%, so that your operators are focused on what's real and important. Your guard dispatches have purpose, to be able to reduce the number of open repair tickets and to reduce the time, the steps, and the cost to maintain the health and wellness of your various physical security devices and systems. And then provide a means of proactively monitoring in real time the most important performance metrics you have, to be able to provide advanced training or to identify operational efficiencies that will make security more proactive as opposed to reactive. So let's look at false alarms as an example. It's a great place to kind of start. The typical GSOC or SOC today is a challenging place to work. I'm sure all of you on the call can agree with that. Operators are being flooded with alarms. They have to manually really make a decision on what to work and what not to work. Oftentimes alarms are either ignored or mass deleted because it's assumed that that alarm is a false alarm or it's unimportant. That's not a great place to be. It creates a lot of stress and strain on operators, which is why we see a lot of turnover in operators on a continuous basis. And we also know that every organization will fully admit that every alarm, real or not, has an actual cost associated with it. Whether it's worked, whether it's ignored, that alarm has a direct impact on your security posture, the health and safety of your workers, and the overall cost of the security organization. So false alarms, nuisance alarms are a big problem, but what to do, right? Most organizations have not had a solution to be able to solve understanding and resolving false and nuisance alarms. Bring in Vector Flow, and Vector Flow is now connected to your alarm system, which typically is coming through your physical access control, your Linnell, your Genetec, your AMAG, your Secure, what have you. And we're sitting there as a layer, and we're listening and looking at all of these alarms, and we're doing root cause analysis. Why is that alarm being generated? Where is it being generated? How often is it being generated? What are the circumstances that creates that particular alarm? We're now able to decipher and determine what's a real alarm and what's potentially a false or nuisance alarm. And the software now goes into play, and this is where the AI is making a recommendation to say that the device is creating an alarm because it's not programmed or installed to take into impact human conditions, weather conditions, and other things. A good example of that is a door held open alarm that is constantly flooding an operator every Monday through Friday between 7 and 9 a.m. is typically happening because that's when you see the biggest increase in volume of traffic going through that particular door. Vector Flow will make a recommendation to security to be able to optimize that particular door shut time, say from a half a second to a second, which will dramatically reduce the number of alarms. And that optimization will happen for that particular day and period of time that's recommended, and then it will default back to the regular setting. So you have control, you have the ability to make a decision on what devices to optimize based on different conditions like weather and traffic and other circumstances. But it's the net result is your operators will be much less fatigued. They'll be very focused on what's real and important. Your guard dispatches will only be going to things that impact your user community, not chasing around false and nuisance alarms. The net result is going to be pretty significant, a significant cost savings. Less alarms will be less money to your organization. You'll be much more focused and proactive on what's real and important. Your guard dispatches will be purposeful. You'll see this in our demonstration in a moment, but everything we do in vector flow is dashboard driven, which gives you at a glance ability to see what's most important. How many alarms do I have in that particular day? How many devices have been optimized to reduce alarms? Important metrics like mean time to acknowledge, mean time to respond. Again, the dashboard view is giving you an at a glance view of how I'm performing and what's most important to me. But also the ability to drill into various different metrics and information to get granular information about a particular location, a particular device. And we'll see this in the demonstration, but everything vector flow does is very dashboard driven. And again, very configurable to your different users to be able to view information the way they want to without custom coding. So let's kind of step forward. Let's assume we've now installed vector flow. We're now solving and eliminating your false and nuisance alarms. And now we need to look at alarms that are caused by faulty equipment. And this is, again, a very chronic and known challenge to most organizations in that their break fix process, frankly, is somewhat of an old-fashioned process. But what to do? Again, they haven't had the power of a solution like vector flow to be able to resolve this challenge. The typical current state of device maintenance is the device breaks. The operator notices or an end user reports that a device or a door or a camera or something is no longer working. That then kicks off this kind of break fix process, which is, again, extremely manual and devoid of real data to be able to create a much more operational, efficiently process. And what typically happens is it gets reported, a ticket is created, there's some troubleshooting to understand what's actually wrong with that particular device. An internal or external resource is dispatched to create the repair. Oftentimes that results in multiple trips, not a single trip. Eventually it gets fixed. Well, the time and the cost of this current process is, again, very reactive. Takes too much time, has an impact on the health and wellness of your end user community, puts security in a very troublesome area where they've got a down device that is really important to them. And it doesn't need to be this way. There's an opportunity to use the power of the data that you have within your organization, and vector flow will bring that to bear. And the net result is we can actually detect early warning signs of the health and wellness of your various different devices. Whether it's motion detector, whether it's physical access control doors and badges, other systems that are part of your overall physical security ecosystem. We're listening and detecting and learning about these different devices, and we can actually provide a recommendation, even predict that a device is in an unhealthy state, and give you a break fix repair process that will reduce significantly the number of steps, that will provide very detailed information about exactly what is wrong with the device, so that when your internal or external technician is dispatched to make the repair, they know what's wrong with it. They know they have the right tools, they have the right repair parts. It's a one and done repair. This will significantly reduce the time and the cost associated with break fix repair and provide you a much more proactive state and a higher level of health and wellness of your various security devices. And again, system dashboard is now giving you, how many devices are in repair, how many have been repaired, what are the most egregious areas where you have devices, what is the challenge with that? So again, a very visual capability to get a high level view of what is important and what's in the green, yellow, red, and then being able to actually drill into very specific devices, locations, areas within your organization that will help you manage this process much more effectively and efficiently than you're doing today. So fast forward again, Vector Flow is now really helping you reduce your false and nuisance alarms. We've now given you a significantly more efficient break fix process, a much more predictable method, a reduced cost, a better level of service around device health and maintenance. Now let's look at how we can improve our overall security posture and talk about governance, right? This is the metric KPI driven performance aspects of the organization. And again, as I talked about before, the real challenge is that all of this is done manually today, right? One or many people are tasked with gathering data from a wide variety of different systems and applications. They compile that data, they share it with their end user community, the security community, and then they try and make sense as to what's working, what's not, what's in the green, what's in the yellow, what's in the red, and what do we do about it? Again, it's somewhat of an old-fashioned process of manually gathering information and trying to figure out how we can improve our security posture. Vector Flow wants to kind of allow security to be security, focus on what's real important, not gathering data. We'll do that for you. So Vector Flow, again, real-time data streaming engine connected to all of your different devices, applications, logs, systems, databases. We'll gather this information for you. We can distribute that to your end user community, either on demand or as scheduled. And the software will make recommendations and opportunities for improvement. A good example could be Lou and I are both operators in the SOC, and Vector Flow will report that, Kyle's mean time to acknowledge an alarm is, 60 seconds, not bad. But Lou's mean time to acknowledge is 45 seconds. We can actually disseminate and understand the steps in the processes, determine why there's that variance, and make recommendations on improvements where I can actually lower my mean time to acknowledge from 60 to 45 or even lower than that. And that's just a simple example, but across the security organization, the whole goal here is provide you with real-time visibility to what's most important, what's most measurable, to lower cost, to create operational efficiencies, to provide real-time information, actionable intelligence to the security organization. And again, dashboard driven, tile driven, give me an at-a-glance view so I know how I'm performing that day. Let me drill into the things that are yellow or red so that I can get an understanding as to whether I can take action now, or this is an opportunity for me to put something in plan, change a policy, update a workflow, or provide enhanced training from my security users. Vector Flow is completely unobtrusive to your existing technology state. We're not replacing the way that your operators manage alarms. We're just reducing the number of alarms. We're not replacing the technology that you have, your sensors and your devices. We're just gathering data from them. So you can expect us to leverage the investments that you've already made within your organization. We plug in, we start gathering data, and we start solving these chronic challenges and problems within the SOC environment. So covered some ground fairly quickly there, and I think it's a great opportunity now to pivot and say, let's look at what the software is actually accomplishing. I'll change this over and ask Lou to give us a quick demonstration of Vector Flow SOC automation.
Hey, thanks, Kyle. Appreciate the intro there and great background on our Vector Flow, an introduction to our Vector Flow SOC automation solutions. I'm going to take you through a brief overview of the three main applications of SOC automation. And we'll talk a little bit about how we start that journey and how we start to help you really gain control of your security operations center and to do more with your teams, elevate them to do higher priority issues, really reduce the noise, right? That's kind of the where it all starts, is reducing the white noise and allowing your operators to really focus on those real events. And we'll show you here how we do that as we go forward. So first off, the application is completely browser-based, so it's very easy to deploy and also utilize on a global scale. So it's very, very portable in that respect. A little bit about the interface. So what you'll notice here is that there are these informational tiles up at the top of the application. This is going to give you quick access to the most important metrics that you're after, right, in each of those different applications. And I'll talk about what some of these key metrics are there. Another thing that we also want to do is to be able to talk about and visualizing the key metrics and different trends in your operations center. How are we trending in key areas like maybe it's alarms, by time, even by category and things like that. So Vector Flow gives you a very unique visualization that access control systems just don't do today, right? Power BI, maybe some other reporting platforms do, but Vector Flow also uniquely manages those alarms. We also see things like top sites for alarms or even top devices. So you're going to see lots of different charts and graphs. The real power in Vector Flow is what's happening underneath in that root cause analysis. And then what are some of the automated actions that we're able to provide you to be able to start to improve your SOC posture. So the application installs very quickly, right? Within a day, you have the application running. We make sense and ingest all of your prior alarm history, journal history, event history from your access control system or systems, and start to make sense of that data. Also, in parallel, starting to consume the live alarms and events. The whole purpose there is to really build a profile around each access control device, doors, motion sensors, inputs, all these different types of devices, and start to understand what are the optimal settings for that particular device. And we'll talk a little bit more about how we really break down that root cause analysis to do some amazing things. So I like to kind of tell the story a little bit in a bit of a journey, right? Because this application is all about data in motion and how we're able to adjust things on the fly into your changing business conditions. Every business is very, very dynamic, from energy to healthcare to banking and finance. Your businesses aren't static. People are moving in and out of buildings, generating alarms. Vector Flow easily allows you to manage that, and we'll show you how we do that here. So on day zero, now these zeros are not any problem with the application. Think of day zero as when the application installs. Within 24 to 40 hours, once we've consumed all that data, we're going to start to show you results right away in terms of your current security posture, right? So we haven't done anything yet to eliminate false alarms or identify devices need repair. That's going to come in a few short days. But what we will show you is what's my current time to acknowledge across all of my alarms. How does that, more importantly, how does that relate to my service levels that I've committed to the business? This is a critical piece here because one of the main drivers from a business perspective in Vector Flow is how compliant are we with our internal policies for delivering timely responses to alarms and serving our customers and our employees to provide them potential life safety support and assistance. What's our current backlog, right? If I have lots of alarms that I'm constantly chasing, and I'm going to have a big backlog. So what does that look like? And things like that. So, each one of these provides drilled through capability. So if I want to see in more detail what makes up these time to acknowledge, and what is the trend over, let's say, a month to 6 months to a year, even filtering that based on, certain types of alarms, you've got a really very quick access to real-time data that allows you to do some amazing things to gain the visibility that you didn't have before. And again, this is within 24 to 48 hours of installing the application. All this data becomes available to you. So I can really start to see, man, I've got a high, forced and held open alarm count. It seems pretty consistent over the last year. And it shows me also critical information like, what's the moving average? How many card swipes or, how much traffic is in each of these buildings, right? I can filter all this information based on location, badge type. So limitless filtering options to be able to see things at a global level, a regional level, and even down to the site level. So giving you the visibility that you never had before, right? Now let's move forward, right? I want to also see from a CSO level down, I want to know what are the biggest risks to my organization? What are the type of alarms that are actually happening on a day in and day out basis? Vector Flow will show you that very quickly and very easily here. As I said, let's move forward and we'll show you what Vector Flow does in a few short weeks. So as Vector Flow understands those devices and the alarms that are coming in, we're going to start to do the root cause analysis. This is the key element of Vector Flow and where it's going to help you as an organization. So we understand that, alarms come in for a particular device, and we can look at what those optimal settings are. In that root cause analysis, we're going to look at alarms are coming in and also potentially leading indicators of device failure, faults, errors, loops, things like that. So where we start to see that type of data, our AI is going to suggest recommended optimizations to the health of that device by changing software settings. And I'll break that down a little further in here in just a moment. But as I can see here, in just a few short weeks, Vector Flow is going to start to eliminate alarms by optimizing devices and identifying faulty devices along with that process. But the real goal and power from an operational perspective and improvement to your operations and your staff is by optimizing security devices, we're going to inherently generate less alarms, less nuisance alarms, only real alarms. If I have only real alarms and a less, backlog, I'm going to be able to get to alarms faster, provide the support and assistance that we need to our people, right? And also start to meet our SLAs, right? They all go hand in hand. So you start to see that capability and really achieving that level of compliance that you're after. And also the time that's saved, right, by automation. If I could eliminate nuisance alarms, optimize and provide optimal health for your access control environment, I'm going to save you lots of time and money and effort by automation of all of these different tasks. And certainly a much happier workforce, a less burdened and a less burnt out workforce is going to only improve morale as well. So, that's at a high level, right? What are we able to do at a high level in terms of those results? Well, how does Vector Flow do that? How do we understand what is the root cause analysis? What makes this work? Let's take a closer look. I'm going to start at this alarms eliminated dashboard here. So in this example, in this page, we're going to see here, what are the top devices that we've eliminated the most alarms from? So I can see here, where it's from, and also what's the percentage of those alarms. Let's take a little look at this example, this door here, 155. And again, I'm going to show an example of a door, but we could do this for, tamper devices, input alarms, motion detectors, even understand power state changes and things like that at the, controller or even reader level. We'll get into that here in just a moment. But let's take this example, right? Vector Flow is correlating. Our machine learning correlates lots of data from a multitude of factors to understand what the likely reasons why this device is generating nuisance alarms. And also the most important piece is the recommendations on how to fix that, to give the optimal settings to only alarm when a true alarm happens or something that requires investigation, if you will. So a couple little lay of the land here. So we use things like the device age and card swipe or swipe count to understand, is this an aging device? Is it a new device that could factor into the recommendation that gets made? When we look at this graph here in the middle, we can see the alarm trend in the history. Also the inputs and errors, right? And what I can see here is that, yes, I have a high, there was a pretty consistent number of alarms until Vector Flow made some optimizations. You see that little blue flag there. So we do much more listening and monitoring before we make any optimizations. We don't automate or suggest changes every minute, every hour, even every day. Only when we have our AI has made a reasonable enough calculation as to the changes that could be made to help reduce nuisance alarms. We can see we made a couple changes here. It looks like the third time over the course of that third month, we really made a big impact to the false and nuisance alarm count. I can see here that there aren't any input errors or faults. So the health of the device doesn't appear to be an issue because I'm not seeing that data. right? So, multiple, factors in here. I can see the status of the inputs and their alarms, but we also want to overlay some really and factor in some other important elements, right? Someone might say an investigation or an analyst say, hey, maybe the traffic went down at this particular site, and that's the reason why the alarm count went down. Well, I can see here that traffic actually has gone, remained consistent, and in some cases went up much higher. Now, I'm explaining this to you to get you to understand how vector flow visualizes this information and some of the elements, but this is what our machine learning is doing 24/7, 365 for every single device you have. The understanding, the correlation and so forth of, each device, you'll see here, very shortly, is really not a human problem to fix, because the settings, right? What we're doing in these optimizations is really managing the various configurations of that particular device. And as you know, as access control professionals, there are a multitude of settings, shunt times, debounce times, relock times, all of these settings on every single device. So yes, you might have had a standard setting, that gets applied to all doors or devices. Some you might have changed based on, internal doors versus external doors, but that could be on day one, right? 6 months down the line, 3 years down the line, as the door settles, the building settles, the pressure in the building changes because there's more people or less people. All these factors, right? That, a lot of these settings are in second or millisecond level. Again, to manage that, you'd have to have the best tech from Convergint at every single door, monitoring it, 24/7 to constantly keep that door behaving optimally and not generating those false alarms, right? That reality is really where vector flow's machine learning really comes into play to solve that problem, to provide that value and ensure that we're reducing that false alarm count and constantly monitoring it so that you only see, and your operators only see, true alarms, right? Millisecond changes, second changes, humans just can't process things that fast and certainly monitor them, perpetually, if you will. Now, vector flow is also going to show you the changes that it makes, right? So when we monitor and we suggest optimizations to the configuration settings or those timer settings on a particular door device to provide the optimal behavior, we keep track of that, right? We keep track of that from a perspective here and show you what those new values are, right? So there's a lot of great information here that's at the fingertips of your security, management staff. Now, one thing I'll point out is that vector flow doesn't change the operator's experience with managing alarms. This application is not going to add yet another screen to your already very busy SOC, set of screens and dashboards. This is really for your security, the SOC management staff and up to understand the trends, and also vector flow is working in the background to constantly ensure that only true alarms are being sent to wherever you're managing alarms, whether it's the native Genetec or a Vigilon or a Secure alarm screen, or a PSIM like a SureView or some other applications, right? So we're not changing that experience. What we are doing is making sure that the alarms that they receive are true actionable alarms. So I've talked a little bit about how we start to do that, right? And how we make those determinations. There's a lot of power there, but how do we actually take action, right? So a couple things here. Number one, our AI is going to make those recommendations, right? Those timer settings, very quickly and easily available. So in this, case, this Ottawa, iStar device, we're looking at this current value of an attribute here and what we're making those recommended settings for, right? This can be based on schedule, right? We can look and see, hey, is there a lot of, door held opens at a particular door from a particular period of time during the day, and change the settings for that particular time so that we reduce those alarms. There's many different things that we do to make sure, whether it's schedule-based or perpetually, that you're getting, again, those true alarms. So if I was a manager, I could then authorize the change to that particular device setting, and vector flow will go make that into the access control system. We also have the power to automate those changes in optimizations. That's an optional feature. You can turn that on and off. You can turn it on and off on a particular device perspective. So, really flexible, really powerful, but also operating within your guidelines, and also more importantly, within the access control system's guardrails, if you will, to ensure that the changes or optimizations we're making are only within that manufacturer's suggested changes, if you will. So a lot of cool stuff there. So again, just to summarize, false alarm reduction is all around optimizing the software configurations of your access control devices to ensure that we're only getting true alarms for your operational staff. Let's move over to the systems health and predictive maintenance application. So as I said, the critical element for vector flow is, and how we do it, is understanding the stream of data coming from the access control system to understand the health of the device and start to understand that root cause analysis of what needs to be done in order to result in optimal behavior. As I said, part of that data stream is also faults, errors, communication failures, all those things that your Convergint, integration team will have to do to ultimately fix those devices. So let's talk about how we can help there too, right? So again, dashboard showing us some key metrics all around the health of your devices. As Kyle was talking about earlier, today it's a completely manual process. You start to see these, a device either fails outright, or you start to get alarm floods. You start to get, lots of nuisance, input alarms and things like that. Power failures and stuff, right? All the stuff that tends to be white noise that requires a lot of effort from your internal business analyst staff or technical analysts to find out. Then they have to manually create that ticket for the Convergint team and iCare, and then they have to, do their steps. Very timely, very costly, and again, completely reactive. How do we change that model? That's what vector flow allows us to do. So not only do we visualize this, as I mentioned, very similar, right? Similar experience to the other application of false alarms, but the real critical piece is identifying devices with anomalies and devices that need repair and becoming much more proactive. Devices are going to give us low-level, verbose data around leading indicators of failure, as I talked about some of those examples earlier. What do we do with that? How do we make action on that to get devices fixed faster and less costly, right? So, I can see things in a very visual way here, but let's take a quick example. So again, we show, similarly as we were talking about earlier, we show you from a visibility standpoint, devices that need repair. And lots of different, types of devices, and also the errors and alarms that come along with that, right? So I can see here, what are the top devices by communication failures, faults, open loops, all that kind of stuff, right? So I can see that very, very visually here. Let's choose this Boston door here that also has a number of alarms as well as faults. So at the door level, again, similar to the screen I was showing before, but we're going to see some unique differences here. So in this particular device with this alarm, with this door, I'm also going to see some input errors and input errors, right? I can see here lots of door held open alarms. We tried to optimize the device. It looked like it fixed it for a little bit, but then there was, the device was put into repair, right? It's still, the alarm count is going up. We normalized a little bit, but it's still relatively active. I can see a pretty consistent set of input errors that come along with each of those door held open alarms. I'm also seeing and correlating over here lots of faults coming in from the recs. Again, I'm kind of breaking down what the AI is doing automatically, but from our purposes to kind of help you understand what are the things that vector flow is doing to actually make these determinations and make the recommendations on what needs to be fixed. I can also see that the traffic or the card swipes follows a pretty consistent pattern. So correlating these disparate events, correlating this data is going to tell us what needs to be done, right? So it looks like here that every time that there's a swipe at that door, that there's a held open, and I'm also getting an input error that's related to that particular Rex device. That's great from a visualization standpoint. Well, what does vector flow do to help me solve that problem? Number one, we'll create a ticket in your ticketing system, right, into iCare. We could automatically, update that service, work order. So reduce the manual steps from somebody having to manually review, manually create the ticket, and put in notes on what needs to be fixed. VectorFlow can automate all of that and also provide AI-driven, very detailed resolution instructions. So when the Convergint, team, reviews this, or your internal staff reviews this initially, they might be able to even fix that device prior to ever rolling out a truck, ever having to take that device out of service completely, send a guard if it's a high security area. So the time and the money and the cost savings and the effort savings here is huge, right? Again, think of this, I'm showing one device, right? You might have hundreds, if not thousands of devices that need to be maintained, might need to be serviced over the course of time, and to be able to allow us to now become much more proactive as we're seeing those indicators of failure, to be able to address those issues before that device goes into a failed state, or we need to replace that particular device. So really critical here in terms of being able to, in that, as I said, that same data stream that comes from access control, the data is there. We're not changing that access control system's behavior at all. The data is all there. We're making use of it in a very unique way to help you understand the health of your devices, but be much more proactive in understanding what might need to be fixed to keep that device in good health, and also to automate those manual steps. Kyle was showing back in his diagram earlier how we can reduce the effort, which inherently lowers the cost and ultimately gives you greater security and mitigates the risks within your facilities and for your people. So that's just one example of how VectorFlow's predictive maintenance manager is identifying issues with devices and allowing you to be much more proactive in the resolution and the fixing of those particular devices. Next thing I'll talk about here is governance, right? So if I kind of recap this in a kind of a three-step process, false alarm reduction, if we're able to understand the root cause analysis of alarms and resolve those, we lower alarm count, which allows you to get to alarms faster and provide greater service to your organization. That same data stream, if I can proactively identify leading indicators of failure and fix those devices better, faster, cheaper, and less costly in effort to your team and also to the Convergint team, you're going to be able to provide better service and have better security and mitigate risks for the organization. That all rolls up to overall SOC governance and how the business, how the SOC and the security to the team and department delivers on its promises to the business, right? That's all around the governance model. So VectorFlow's governance application, again, is really looking at those metrics, those key metrics. What the CSO down to your SOC supervisor have committed to is, what are our risks? What are our SLAs that we want to achieve? And how do we measure ourselves against that, right? So VectorFlow provides real-time dashboards, real-time insights into the performance of the overall, SOC. Are we meeting our SLAs for time to acknowledge, right? And how does that trend? Our time to resolve, all those kind of things. Those are the key initial questions. But how we go about reviewing our metrics with our employees, understanding where you as an organization and many organizations outsource their guard staff, right? How do we make sure that they are meeting their objectives? We're identifying the folks that are performing very well and reward them, if you will, and also identifying those that might need training opportunities, folks that are just not holding up their end of the bargain. It could very well be because they're inundated with too many alarms. That's what we often see prior to VectorFlow. So a lot of cool stuff here, but what I just want to focus on a couple key areas, right? How are we responding to alarms? Are we meeting our SLAs? By operator, looks like here we've got a pretty good, they're above average in there, meeting their service level agreements. But if we want to get more granular based on region, based on even something like shift, and really understanding the performance, where we might have those exceptions. Is it the overnight staff that has exceptions because they're just tired? Is it the day staff that has exceptions because they're just too busy because there's too many alarms, right? So all these different things, nearly impossible to get that data out of the existing access control system because they're just not designed for it, right? How do we visualize that stuff? Instead of, today it's usually manually, correlating data across, multitude of reporting systems, but also that data becomes stale very quickly. This data is all in real time. So you can have much more meaningful conversations with your teams and understand the trend and performance on how we're responding to alarms, maybe by alarm type, and also breaking that down by operator and even, shift and so forth. So a couple of quick things I'll point out here before we get over to the Q&A is, for the example of where you want to understand the performance of your operators, right? So we correlate all the data and understand who's responding to alarms, who's taking ownership of those alarms, relating that to the type of alarm, where it's coming from, all that kind of stuff, and really providing an overall audit score for each of those operators. Who are the best performing operators and those that need that training, right? So, how long have they been there? How many alarms they've monitored, and also their acknowledgement and resolution times, right? So we visualize all that for you, again, real time. You want to have a daily sync up with this person or a monthly, whatever it is, the data is all there. You don't have to do anything for it. It automatically is generated here. So you can see all these different key insights for performance and so forth. So you can really get very granular into those areas of opportunity and whatnot. Another amazing element of vector flow is that our AI looks at the quality of the responses. Everybody would probably raise their hand if you said, hey, do you have a copy paste issue with operators that just put in the same resolution issue or reasoning for the alarm? Well, vector flow can look at those comments and also provide a thumbs up or an assessment score, an audit score around that. Are they actually doing their video verification or dispatch and whatnot? So looking at the quality of the response is extremely powerful in being able to guide or further train up your operational staff. So really critical here when it comes to not only understanding those high level elements of compliance, but also being able to take steps to improve that in the areas that require it. Right. Also things like being able to identify exceptions, right? If you're in a regulated industry, identify like banking and finance, oil and gas, they need to document the exceptions to that compliance and at those service levels. Why didn't we respond to that alarm in the time that we committed to the business? That needs to all be documented for forensic purposes and auditing purposes. Vector flow allows you to document those exclusions, on a monthly basis per alarm type. You can add notes to all this kind of stuff. So being able to document what happened, why it happened, when it happened, and who was responsible for it, all within the system here. Also, who's generating alarms? People, right? People are generating alarms. The system is going to help you understand those risky identities, right? Folks that you're able to understand, who generated these alarms in those cases. Not every time we can, but for where we can understand this, we can start to identify those risky identities, what their pattern of behavior is, and then feed that into the other vector flow applications like identity risks and insider threats, and also our PIAM application to be able to do things like automate additional audits and also automate, even access actions like suspending badges or suspending access for those repeat offenders. So I think we reached pretty much the end of our time here today on the demonstration piece. But again, vector flow, the three main applications, false alarm reduction, predictive maintenance, and governance, are really focused on delivering greater business value to your SOC operations to help them be more focused, to address true alarms that require support to our teams and around our facilities across the globe, and also ensure that we are identifying false alarms and also the health of our devices much more proactively. That's going to save us time and effort and ultimately deliver a greater experience for our operational staff and greater business value to the organization. So I'll turn it back over to Doug and the team for our Q&A portion, but I appreciate everybody's time today in our demonstration.
Awesome, Lou. Thanks so much. I know we just have a few minutes here left. I know you covered a few of these devices in the overview, but could you just elaborate real quick on, first off, what types of physical access control systems vector flow supports? And then what are the different devices that you would be bringing in for alarm management?
Yeah, great question. So, and I know Kyle shared some of this in the presentation, but VectorFlow supports all of the leading access control systems, from Genetec to Secure to Linnell, Vigilon, and many others. So we understand the importance of being able to support those access control systems and make use of those integrations. So yeah, we support all the leading vendors and can integrate many more quite easily. From a device perspective, it's really every access control device. Certainly, we see the majority of alarms come from doors, right? Forced and held open and such. But we can also monitor, input alarms, input devices, motion detectors, even, power, and battery devices. So it's really every device that's connected to the access control system. We understand the data from it and be able to optimize it for that optimal health.
Yeah, I think in addition, Doug and Lou rightly said, virtually every device that's creating an alarm or event that's flowing through the physical access control, because that's typically the funnel, we're able to gather information and do the root cause analysis. But also, a lot of customers now are getting alarms and events that are generated through video analytics, right? The analytic is seeing something and it's generating, so we're able to see that. And again, decipher what's real and what's false, and then even give recommendations on how the analytic can be tweaked to be more effective in identifying something that's actual a risk or an event versus a false event.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, when you think about the fact that one, we can get outside just access control into the video surveillance side of things, how many people have their individual cameras set up with motion alarms or some type of very specific analytic, and they're just getting false alarms, nuisance alarms, that tree that keeps moving in the background, causing it to fire off. How could that get optimized, right? Without that human intervention component. That's huge. The last thing I kind of want to leave everyone with, Kyle, is, what's the typical deployment time frame for this, and what kind of ROI could be expected when deploying this? Because I can tell you from a Convergint perspective, everything that we want to work with our customers on has to have a fast time to value and show benefit, especially on the software side.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the most important question for the audience to take away today. We're a subscription-based model. We typically deploy in a matter of days, and really, it's a very light deployment. It can be on-prem or in the customer's private cloud instance, or Convergint or VectorFlow can provide that cloud instance for the customer. So lots of flexibility there. But typically, the deployment is a matter of days. There's some configurability, some report. You saw our dashboards. We'll get that all based on what the customer wants to see. We start ingesting data. And then within the first 30 days, we start generating results. I mean, it's very rapid deployment and very rapid value to business. The ROI is substantial. We wouldn't be talking about this and these chronic problems if there wasn't a big bang for the buck. Reducing false and nuisance alarms is going to save you money. It's also going to make your security posture much more proactive and effective. It'll have you look at, where do we have too many guards? Where do we have too many guards? Your whole concept of managing what's important and real is going to have a really sizable and measurable impact. So the return on investment is very measurable. You look at the device break fix. Many of our customers, long open queues, backlogs of device break fix. They don't know what's in warranty, what's out of warranty, multiple trips, as I was talking about. The return on investment, the value to having a much more effective and efficient, proactive, predictive means of maintaining equipment will save a lot of money. So I encourage the audience to consider that and then engage us in Convergint to have that conversation about what your metrics are, how many alarms and events you're facing, what your current device break fix process is, and we can actually give you very specific, measurable return on investment numbers.
Perfect. Well, that's it for today. Kyle, Lou, thank you so much for being on. Hopefully everybody that was watching got a really great in-depth overview of SOC automation and what it can do at your organization. So with that, again, I'm Doug Greenwald with the Digital Transformation Team. If you've got any follow-up following this, get with your Convergint account executive. They can connect with me and we can get you a personalized demo, walk through this in greater detail with your team and help you understand the benefit, as Kyle described, in a short time to value. Thank you so much for your time and enjoy the rest of your week.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.